Hi, good afternoon, my sweet third graders, and to all the families and friends that are also watching. Hope you're having a great day today. I hope you're able to get outside. It's so nice out, a little chilly, but if you had a little windbreaker on, you could maybe play with some chalk or do something fun outside with your family and friends. So I'm actually filming at the house that I grew up in, where my mom and dad currently live, and a lot of you at school know my mom is Grandma Tallon, and so she says hello to everyone. And today I'm going to share with you from our in-class read aloud, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. We're going to read chapters 20 and 21. And so I wanted to get started, but let's recap from where we ended yesterday. And yesterday, sadly, Sarah Ruth did pass away, and Bryce just couldn't bear it anymore, and he didn't want to stay living in his home, basically alone. And so he decided, you know what, Jangles, we're packing up, and we're leaving, and we're heading to Memphis. And that's where we ended. And so chapter 20, our picture that starts with that, shows Edward with all of his puppeteer strings hanging. So let's go and let's see what happens. All right. How many dancing rabbits have you seen in your life? Bryce said to Edward. I can tell you how many I've seen. One. You. That's how you and me, we're going to make some money. I seen it the last time that I went to Memphis. Folks put on all kinds of shows right there on the street corner, and people pay them. They pay right what they see. The walk to town took all night. Bryce walked without stopping, carrying Edward under one arm and talking to him the whole time. Edward tried to listen, but the terrible scarecrow feeling had come back. The feeling he had when he was hanging by his ears in the old lady's garden. The feeling that nothing mattered, that nothing would ever matter again. And not only did Edward feel hollow, he ached. Every part of his china body hurt. He ached for Sarah Ruth. He wanted her to hold him. He wanted to dance for her. And he did dance, but it was not for Sarah Ruth. Edward had to dance for strangers on a dirty street corner in Memphis. Bryce played his harmonica and moved Edward's strings, and Edward bowed and shuffled and swayed, and people stopped to stare, and he pointed and laughed. On the ground in front of them was Sarah Ruth's button box. The lid was propped open to encourage people to drop some change inside of it. Mama, cried a small child, look at that bunny. I want to touch him. He reached out his hand towards Edward. No, said the mother. Dirty! She pulled the child back away from Edward. Nasty! She told the child. A man wearing a hat stopped and stared at Edward and Bryce. It's a sin to dance, he said. And then long after a pause, he said, it's a particular sin for rabbits to dance. The man took off his hat and held it over his heart. He stood and watched the boy and the rabbit for a long time. Finally, he put his hat back on, and he started to walk away. The shadows lengthened, and the sun became an orange, dusty ball low in the sky. Bryce started to cry. Edward saw his tears landing on the pavement, but the boy did not stop playing his harmonica. He did not make Edward stop dancing. An old woman leaning on a cane stepped up close to them, and she stared at Edward with deep, dark eyes. Pellegrina? Thought the dancing rabbit. She nodded at him. Look at me, he said to her, his arms and legs jerking. Look at me. You got your wish. I had to learn how to love, and it's a terrible thing, and I'm broken, and my heart is broken. Help me. The old woman turned and hobbled away. Come back, thought Edward. Fix me. Bryce now cried harder. He made Edward dance faster, and finally, when the sun was gone and the streets were completely dark, Bryce stopped playing his harmonica. I'm done now, he said. He let Edward just fall onto the pavement. I ain't gonna cry anymore. Bryce wiped his nose with the back of his hand. He picked up the button box and looked inside it. Well, we got us enough money to get us something to eat, he said. Come on, Jangles. So now we're on chapter 21, and it has a picture, and it says Neil's Diner. And we know that a diner is like a restaurant. All right, here we go. The diner was called Neil's. The word was written in big red neon letters that flashed on and off. And inside it was warm and bright and smelled like fried chicken and toast and coffee. Bryce sat at the counter and put Edward on a stool next to him. He leaned the rabbit's forehead up against the counter so that he would not fall. "What you gonna have, sugar?" the waitress said to Bryce. "Give me some pancakes," said Bryce, "and some eggs, and I want a steak too, and I want a big old steak, and I want some toast and some coffee." The waitress leaned forward and pulled at one of Edward's ears and then pushed him backward so she could see his face. "Is this your rabbit?" she said to Bryce. He's mine now. He belonged to my sister." Bryce again wiped his nose with the back of his hand. "We're in the show business now, me and him." "Is that right?" said the waitress. She had a name tag on the front of her dress. Marlene, it said. She looked at Edward's face, and then she let go of his ear, and he fell back forward, and his head rested against the countertop again. "Go ahead, Marlene," thought Edward. "Push me around. Do what you will with me. What does it matter? I'm broken. The food came, and Bryce ate all of it without even looking up from his plate. "Well, you was hungry for sure," said Marlene as she cleared away the plates. "I reckon show business is hard work." "Yes, ma'am," said Bryce. Marlene tucked the check underneath the coffee cup. Bryce picked it up and looked at it and then shook his head. "I ain't got enough," he said to Edward. "Ma'am," he said to Marlene when she came back to fill up his coffee cup, "I ain't got enough." "What, sugar?" "I ain't got enough money." She stopped pouring the coffee and looked at him. "Ooh, you're going to have to talk to Neil about that one." Neil, it turned out, was both the owner and the cook. He was a large, red-haired, red-faced man who came out of the kitchen holding a spatula in one hand. "You came in here hungry, right?" he said to Bryce. "Yes, sir," said Bryce. He wiped his nose with the back of his hand. "And you ordered some food, and I cooked it, and Marlene brought it to you, right?" "I reckon," said Bryce. "You reckon?" said Neil. He brought the spatula down onto the countertop with a whack. Bryce jumped. "Yes, sir. No, sir." "I cooked it for you," said Neil. "Yes, sir," said Bryce. He picked Edward up off the stool and held him close. Everyone now in the diner stopped eating. They were all staring at the boy and the rabbit and Neil. Only Marlene was looking away. "You ordered it. I cooked it. Marlene served it. You ate it. Now," said Neil, "I want my money." And he was tapping the spatula lightly on the counter. Bryce cleared his throat. Have you ever seen a rabbit dance?" he said. "How's that?" said Neil. "You ever in your life before seen a rabbit dance?" Bryce set Edward on the floor and started pulling his strings that were attached to his feet, making him do a little show shuffle. He put his harmonica in his mouth and played a sad song that went along with the dance. Somebody laughed. Bryce took the harmonica out of his mouth and said, "He could dance some more if you want him to. He could dance to pay for what we ate." Neil now just stared at Bryce, and then without warning, he reached down and grabbed a hold of Edward. "This is what I think of dancing rabbits," said Neil. And he swung Edward by the feet, swung him so that his head hit the edge of the countertop hard. There was a loud crack. Bryce started screaming, and the world, Edward's world, went completely black. Wow. And that's where we end. And so tomorrow, I know, so bad you're wanting to know what happens to Edward, but I will show you the picture. And chapter 22 it shows Edward walking up to that house. Now I can hear a lot of you right now saying, that's the picture that's on the cover. And you're right. So you have to wonder, what is going to take place? Wow. So maybe with your families, you can talk about, what do you think is going to happen next? What's your prediction? I hope you're having a wonderful day. I keep thinking about you all so much. And make sure that you're making time to have some fun in between some of your learning. And I will see you again soon. All right. Bye-bye.